Hello and welcome to the Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast, where we seek community connection and co-regulation while chatting about all things PDA. Hello and welcome to Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast. I'm Heather.
And I'm Kerissa. And today we have a special guest with us today. Leah is here, and we're going to talk about homeschool, private school, and all the other ways about learning. So, Leah, will you introduce yourself and also kind of tell us your connection with PDA?
Yeah, totally. Hi guys, my name's Leah McDermott. I'm the founder of Your Natural Learner and Bridge Academy. I am a former teacher turned unschooling mom of 3. We can talk a lot about my journey that got me here. It's pretty cyclical, actually, how I circled all around. But basically, I started out in the public school system, and at first I was a kindergarten teacher, and in kindergarten they're all curious and creative, and they believe in magic, and they want to learn everything because the world is their oyster, and we had a lot of fun doing that. And then after a few years there, my district shifted things around, and I got moved to a 5th grade classroom. So I went from K to 5, and that first day was the biggest light bulb for me, one of my big light bulb moments, because you could literally see the light gone from their eyes. And I was like, oh, what have we done to them? In just 4 years, 5 years, they're not curious, they're not creative, they don't want to be here, they don't want to read, they don't want to write, they think that they're bad at learning, they have these labels that they're carrying on their shoulders. We've messed up, we've done something wrong, and that kind of started my journey to where I am today. I've been supporting the unschooling and homeschooling community for 13, 14 years now, since I had my own son, who'll be 14 next month, which was my second big light bulb moment of realizing I was never going to put him in that system, so I couldn't be perpetuating it any longer. And yeah, we fully unschool, although I've written curriculum that's kind of a light structure for unschooling families. And 4 years ago, I started Bridge Academy, which is a virtual private school for K to 12 students, which is fully supporting homeschooling, unschooling. We give resources and community and support, but overall we act as an umbrella or a bridge, if you will, between families getting to live and learn in ways that best fit their needs, and providing all of the structure and the documentation and the legal paperwork to fit into that system still, whether they live in a state where it's very heavily regulated, or even just to need that high school diploma, the transcripts that are still needed in our world, where when they leave school they still need all of that. And then my connection with PDA actually began, I think we had a call a year and a half ago or
We
so.
did a Facebook Live.
Like a Facebook chat, and I have a close family friend who has a son with PDA, so I was familiar with it still, but it didn't really combine with my work until about a year and a half ago, when Bridge was really taking off, and there was that connection of, wait, this could be such a perfect opportunity for students with PDA and multiple neurodiversities, actually, where the system is not designed to support them in any way. It's dangerous in many cases for students with PDA and multiple diversities to be in a regular classroom. I always say the goal is to change the child to fit the system, and really we should be doing the opposite.
Right.
And so that kind of started my journey, and now one of the biggest groups of enrollment in my school is students with PDA, because it is so supportive. And it brings me to tears some days reading some of the learning logs and the stories of parents and kids who were struggling so much trying to make it work in a classroom, and now that they don't have to stress about that anymore, and they can just let these kids light up about the things that they light up about and follow their own journeys, the healing that's taking place, getting to not have so much burnout, just be themselves, exactly who they are, and know that that still counts for something, that they're still learning, they're still growing. It's been a pretty awesome journey to get to where I am.
And in full disclosure, I just want to let everybody know my son has been enrolled in Leah's Bridge Academy for, I think we are on our second year now. And, just like Leah said, it is just an opportunity to let go of all of the formality in education, in learning. And Leah and I have very similar, I remember from when we did our Facebook Live, you and I have very similar professional backgrounds. And our journey on having that aha moment for unschooling is very, very similar. I kind of went backwards where you started in kindergarten and went to fifth grade. I started in the higher elementary, and then my last year of public school teaching, I fell into a special needs preschool position, honestly, because I was a warm body and I was willing to do it. You know what I mean? And I did have some special ed credentials, just not in that age group. And I went from that so hard to teach, so hard to motivate, so difficult to just get an older elementary school student excited to 3, 4, 5-year-olds who they're just excited to be alive. Everything is just, so, it was the hardest year teaching I ever had. I'm not going to lie whatsoever, because 3-year-olds.
It's crowd control. Yeah.
But I think it was so impactful for me to just go, to really help me make the steps into unschooling. It's a hard, it's a leap of faith. It really is a leap of faith. And I was wondering, Leah, what kind of, when a parent comes to you and they're just scared, because I'm going to be very honest with you, when I decided to pull my son out of public school, we went from public school to homeschooling, which what I tried to do is just recreate public schooling at home, because that's what I had done, for a long time. And I remember my aha moment when I had to just let everything go for him and let him take control. And it was scary. And what would you say to a parent? How would you guide them through the process of, okay, I know this is very radical, but.
Yeah, so here's, again, I've been working with homeschooling parents for a really long time, and we have to understand that we are molded by our experiences. So ironically, the other major group of people that are starting to homeschool now are former teachers. That's like the biggest group of new homeschoolers are former teachers leaving the profession. So that should say a lot about the state of the education system, first of all, across the board, neurodiverse or not. That should say a lot. But we are conditioned by our experiences. So most of us grew up in that system, so we already have that conditioning of there's one way to learn, there's one time to learn, you take a test, you take a quiz, you get assessed, you're performing all of the time, that's actually the piece I believe, I'm doing a lot of my own research now, but I believe it is the performance nature of school that is such a struggle for kids with PDA, is having to perform their knowledge for another person. And that is every year that gets worse in the system, is more testing, more data, more performance. And now it's just like, prove you didn't use AI. Right now you're just performing your performance. Like it's just, we're just trying to dig our heels in and make it work. But we have this conditioning of performance from childhood. And then for those of us that also went into teaching, we have this added layer now of conditioning where we went to teacher school for however many years, maybe we got a master's degree in it, and then we were, conditioned by being employed in the system, where you're a perpetuator and then you've got guilt about it. Like 90% of it at least is our own mindset around it. It's not the kids. The kids are primed and ready to be unschooled. No matter who they are, what they are ready to learn and be curious and creative creatures. We are the ones that bring our own conditioning to the table. And so most of the work that we have to do is our own deschooling journey, unlearning and healing from those wounds and those traumas and those experiences that we've carried forever, as that like learning only looks one specific way. And what I see for the average family on this journey is they leave the classroom. They know public school's not working for whatever reason. And they take this path where they leave that, and for comfort's sake, they replicate school at home. They sit at the dining room table and they do workbooks because it's the only thing that feels safe. How could we possibly trust a child to just do what they want all day? That's crazy. We can't do that, right? So most families don't even know how to be together all day anymore because we're just so conditioned to wake up and separate. You know, you go to work, you go to school, we'll spend some time frustrated about homework at the end of the day. So they replicate that school at home, and then they realize that's not really working either because it's just the same thing, only now you're the bully instead of the teachers, and then there's this resistance and fighting. And so they start to let little pieces go where they lean into unschooling a little bit more, like slowly, if they commit to the work, eventually they reach that unschooling path where, you know, everybody can thrive. When you have a student with PDA, the analogy is like someone reaches in and rips away the path. You don't get the luxury of trying little bits of structure and tiny bits of replication at home because they are very smart kids and they will know exactly what you're trying to do by tricking them into learning or making it fun and doing the same thing. They know exactly, see right through what you might be trying to do to make it just a little bit different, only at home. And so, you know, it's like, there's the silver lining is you get to jump right into it, but the hard part is all of that path is ripped away and you just have to find a way. Like you said, you just have to leap in faith right over it and get to that other side of saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to trust this kid. I'm going to trust that their journey is exactly what it needs to be. And I'm going to be here to be their guide, their, you know, the person who offers resources, the person that's their support, their advocate, you know, journey alongside them. We can learn together, but we just, you know, we have to leap. So yeah, it's the biggest thing, the biggest piece of advice I can give is that just understand that the work is all you. You are the one that needs, you are the one that needs the work.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would love for you to explain the term or the theory unschooling. Because we've already said it several times. I know unschooling, I unschool my 2 children, and I don't know that everybody has this understanding of what unschooling is, especially because you hear that you just let them do whatever they want all day. Like, how will they learn? Well, how will they go to college? And so that's what we hear a lot, which goes back to what you said. It's the parents' mental and their ideas of what they've been told. But explain what unschooling is.
Yeah, so there's lots of myths around it, right? And mostly it's not that there's myths around it, it's that there's fear around it. There's fear of letting go of these systems and the structure that have held us together for the last, 60 years or whatever, since we started the, industrial revolution of education. But unschooling it's life without school. It's not life without learning. It's going back to the traditional ways that we've always learned, which is based on what we're interested in, the things we are naturally good at. We all are unique people. We have things that we are very uniquely good at doing and things that we really care about. And if we could understand and see that in every child and put all of our resources into lighting that fire under them and giving them all that they need to thrive in that, how much different could the world be? Because what we're doing right now is everyone goes on the same path. It's
Yep.
assembly lines. Everybody takes the same classes. Maybe there's a little bit of variety in your electives in high school to make you feel like you have a choice. But really, everyone's doing the same thing. We're churning out factory workers, and there's no more factories. We're not coming out on the other side with any kind of jobs that are representative of what we're teaching our kids anymore. And really, the top employers in the world, they want to see people who have new ideas and are really good at communicating and understand how to use technology and are leaders in something unique and cool. We're looking for inventors, and public school actively crushes that out of us to fit us into a mold so we're all the same. So what unschooling says is we don't want that. We want to light up each individual child, and we believe that when we are interested, and this is science too, when we care about something,
Yes.
we learn it deeper, we learn it more meaningfully, and we can apply that knowledge elsewhere. We can have kids, any of us that have been teachers or parents, they'll memorize a list of spelling words, they can get an A on the test, and literally the next day, they can't spell the word properly in a sentence. And that's just a great example of, if you learn something that you don't care about, you're not actually learning it. And that's behavioral science, that's brain science. We know that to be true. Unschoolers, when they have the desire or the motivation to learn something, not only can they do it, but they're not held back by all of these beliefs about learning, that things are at certain grade levels and that's too easy for you, that's too hard for you. They just figure it out, and they learn how to learn instead of someone just telling them what to learn all the time. And can they go to college? Yeah, my Bridge Academy graduates are going to University of Georgia, University of Texas, Georgia State, University of Tennessee. They're doing really cool overseas programs. They're signing professional sports contracts because they get to lean into the things they're really good at. And you know what? If that means that they want to go to college to be a doctor, then they're going to do that research and say, wow, that means
Exactly.
I need to know anatomy, biology, algebra. I got to learn these things. And they'll do it because they need it, and they'll figure it out. And yeah, that's what unschooling is. It's not hiding and gatekeeping learning from our children. It's quite the opposite. It's, giving them everything they need to be uniquely who they are.
Sorry, go ahead.
When we left public school, and that's been several years ago, and we came home to see what my kids can do now, and how peaceful they are, how joyful they are, how incredibly creative that they are now, because we let go of that structure. And also, honestly, I really love that I get to see my kids all day, every day, all the time. Now that they're teenagers, they're really being independent. And so, there's that part too, the connection part of unschooling. And I love when, especially my son shows up and wants to tell me about animals. And I don't need, he's watching animal YouTube.
Yes. Oh my gosh. They know how to find information.
Because that's what he wants. That's what he wants to know. And so I think that's a good example of he's interested, he cares, he finds the information, and he doesn't have to write it down on a piece of paper to show that he actually learned something. If I told him, go watch this video on I think it was I don't know, like an aardvark or some kind of animal, and if I told him, now you have to write it down in 5 paragraphs, in cursive.
Right.
Like that would be such a nightmare, and it would really kill that
Exactly.
interest in him.
Exactly.
And so instead, he will just like randomly show up and be like, "Mom, did you know?"
Yeah.
And
when in real life have we ever had to write a 5-paragraph essay on an aardvark?
Right. Well,
I mean,
not only that, but it's a skill that we learn. Like writing, one of my master's degrees is as a reading specialist. So literacy is a big thing that I'm passionate about. And like we just destroy the love of writing and reading. We destroy it in school because we press them to learn and do things, number one, way before they're developmentally ready.
Yes. That is one of the soapboxes.
Yeah, at least
I'm
once a
on.
month, I'm sharing like pictures of x-rays of children's hands. Like, did you know a 5-year-old, none of their bones even touch in their hands yet when they're 5 years old, and we're still forcing them to hold pencils and sit at desks and write? Like, none of it is developmentally appropriate, and we're just labeling them as behind immediately because their hands don't even have bones yet to do these things we're asking them to do. And then to pressure a 10-year-old to write a 5-paragraph essay for what? They can learn how to do it. The thing is, we have this sense of urgency, and urgency is so loud and trust is quiet. And that's something that I have to say all the time, because the world is so loud about learn skills faster, do things faster. The faster you learn it, the better off you are, the more successful you'll be. And that's simply not true, because the three of us are sitting here having a conversation right now. We're all professionals. We're all moms. I don't know how old you were when you could learn to read. Does it matter if I aced algebra? And like all these things that we act like they matter, and we burden children and we burden these tiny humans that have like their bodies are changing so rapidly, and we are just burdening them with these emotions of performance. My oldest is, like I said, he's almost 14, and his friends range between 12 and 16. And it's funny, I won't see one of them for like a week, and then they'll come over to the house and they're 3 inches taller. And all I can think is like, your body must hurt. You must be so sore and tired because so much is happening, and we're forcing you out of bed at 6:30 in the morning, and we're making you sit in this tiny little desk under fluorescent lights for 7 hours, and then you go play your sports because you get to do the thing you love at the end of the day. You don't get to prioritize it. It's heartbreaking when you really just kind of step outside and look at what we've created. It's very anti-child. It's very anti-human, what we're doing. And I know this kind of all steps away. This is kind of just like generalized, not just with PDA students, but I think the beautiful thing is that students with PDA and, students on the autism spectrum, they're really opening our eyes as a collective. They're helping us see like, hey, you know what? This isn't actually working for anyone. It's just half of us can mask enough to fit in, and maybe we need to just change this all around.
Yes, I think about my husband, and like when he talks about elementary school and even high school, and being a rambunctious Montana boy and he lived at the lake and he rode dirt bikes, and the agony that he felt when he had to go in and sit in a little tiny room in a desk about stuff and listen to things he just absolutely did not care about, and how miserable. And so then looking at my kids, we both were like, yeah, this is not going to work. And so I love that now my kids get to choose how they structure their day. My PDA, she is a night owl, and then she gets to sleep really late in the day, and then she'll get up and she gets to choose what she learns and how she learns it and at what pace, and she gets to choose what's valuable to her. Yeah. And so yesterday she was like, I'm really feeling like baking something. And I was like, awesome, let me know if you need anything from me. And so like the peace and the freedom that it brings in our home is like, I'm so grateful for it. And I can't even imagine now doing it any other way. And like now my son, he might spend all day doing Minecraft, and he's with all of his other homeschool Minecraft friends that are all across the country, and I can hear him laughing and yelling. Or maybe he's outside in the yard and he's like digging and making tunnels, and I'm like, that's what, you know, a little boy.
That's childhood. That's childhood.
Yes.
There's also this myth that once we turn 18, we can't learn anything anymore. Like, why can't we just play? Let them play. Let them do the things they love. And, you know, there's a lot of arguments for, well, we need to make sure that they're exposed. If they don't, okay, they can sit in school and learn about things they don't care about, but maybe they should be hearing about the classics literature and whatever else. And there's so many ways you can still have those things in your home. You can talk to them about it. Let them, the most important thing you can do is model. My kids see me reading all day long. Yep. I love to read. I'm either reading nonfiction for work or I'm reading fiction in the end of the evening to, you know, to relax myself. It's okay if they're not reading books by themselves right now, but they'll always remember that they saw their mom and dad reading. And that's something they'll come back to. They'll understand the importance of it, because I learn so much more now as, you know, in my 40s than I ever learned in my teens. So, because I get to choose it. That's why, because I get to decide I want to learn this new thing, and I'm modeling that to my kids too. You're not too old to learn something new ever. If you're alive, you can learn. And yeah, I think we have to start shifting the narrative around what learning is and what it looks like. And I see it shifting. It's, you know, I've been a voice for many years. I felt like I was a voice in the dark, just kind of shouting these things out, you know, to the ether. But it's exciting now to see. I think that the pandemic really opened a lot of eyes, you know, to what is actually going on in the school system, how much time we're wasting. I think the rapid advancement of AI and technology is making people realize, whoa, we are not prepared at all. Our kids are not prepared. And I'm seeing a lot of conversation around homeschooling in general, but also unschooling. Like, you know, I'm seeing like more prominent, successful voices coming out and saying, I would never put my kids in a system like that. And that's, you know, that's who we need to hear from, I guess.
Yeah. We have a good friend to Journeys with PDA, Claire Truman. She's the author of The Teacher's Introduction to Pathological Demand Avoidance. She's from the UK, and she set up her own school that has all the appropriate PDA accommodations, approaches, but she did teach in a public setting at one point, and she said her aha moment was she had to take one of her students up to, we would call it a principal's office, they call it the head teacher's office, and she just said, this child does not need education. He needs a life apprenticeship. And that rang so true to us. Kerissa and I had her in season 2 as a guest talking about just different approaches on how to teach, you know, PDAers. And I just think that was such an appropriate, like, this is what we're doing. You know, we are offering our kids a life apprenticeship. And, you know, we had mentioned that sometimes with our PDAers, our neurodivergent community, sometimes public school can be dangerous for them. And I'm just going to be like, we talk about hard things, and this is a hard thing. I'm so thankful we decided to pull my son out of public school because, I mean, he was getting suspended in kindergarten. I mean, it's like he's a 5-year-old, right?
Yeah.
Getting suspended. And the school to prison pipeline is a real thing. And I have the utmost respect for public schools, public school teachers, having been one,
Sure.
they and we are all, I think 99% of public schools, the people who are in them, teachers, administrators, are trying to do the best they can. And there's no malicious intent whatsoever.
Of course.
But it's
No,
like you
because
said.
you cannot fight a system that was designed to do one thing. You cannot
Correct.
fight it. I was that teacher. I
Yeah,
tried
so
hard.
was I.
tried
So was
hard
I.
to fight it,
Right?
but you
Yeah.
cannot.
So again, I have the utmost. I still hold teaching licenses in 2 states, and I wouldn't go back for if they paid me $1 million a year. There's just no way. I can't. I wouldn't. No, I can't do that to a student anymore. Right? I just know, like this is going deep for me. I know that if my son stayed in school, he would already be in the legal system, and it would just be an ugly, ugly, ugly thing. I mean, we would joke. My husband and I would joke because you got to get through. You're either going to cry or going to laugh, right? His college fund, when you're born, we set up a 529, all this, and I'm like, well, this is either going to be college or it's going to be legal fees, right? But we have such a joyful life now, and we are calm, and we are connected, and we are regulated. And I was listening, so Kerissa, had the example of the aardvark and her son. My son, I was just listening to what he was listening to on YouTube, and it was all about capacitors and how capacitors work and all, and I'm just like, and I jokingly just said to him, do they cover flux capacitors? And he's like, you know about that? I'm like, yeah, Back to the Future was kind of my deal, so I'm, like, yeah, Doc Brown, flux capacitor. He's like, you're weird, Mom. I'm like, well, join the club. It's okay.
Secretly
weird
awesome,
is fun.
but weird.
So, another part of what Kerissa and I do is we sit in on a lot of IEP meetings. We sit in on a lot of meetings with schools, meetings with parents, and we try our best to make sure, that people understand what PDA is, how to support PDA, etc. But that prison or school to prison pipeline is a
very real.
Very,
Yes.
very. I mean, we have law enforcement in our schools.
Oh yes.
And that's their discipline. I mean, that's their go-to discipline now.
Yes, one of the biggest. So when I made that switch from kindergarten to 5th grade, not only did I shift grade levels, they shifted me schools. So the kindergarten school I was in was on the outskirts of the city. It was very wealthy. All the parents were volunteers. I literally had to ask parents to leave the classroom. I had so many volunteers. And then the 5th grade classroom I was in was not just 5th grade, but it was 5th grade in the inner city, the capital city, in the Title I school, all minority students, many homeless students. Police, it was a regular occurrence to have police come into my 5th grade classroom and remove a child because they followed him on the school bus. A regular occurrence, a 10-year-old. So yes, I actively saw that happening, and that was 15 years ago. So 16 years ago. It's not better. It's not better now than it was then. So you're very right. And you mentioned how your child will just kind of learn these things kind of in the background and then open up and share all these things. And that's the trust part, right?
Yes,
that's
it
the
is.
trust part, is that every day I don't have to ask, what'd you learn today? What'd you learn today? I don't have to do that. And that's the urgency is loud and the trust is quiet. Like, I'm just trusting that it's happening, because then there are those moments, and the safer we make it, where the less we ask, the safer they feel. How would you feel if your partner was coming up to you every day? What'd you learn today? What'd you do today? Did you clean the house today? What do you make it like? Ew, right? We wouldn't like that as adults. So of course the kids aren't going to want to be pressured all the time with that. But when they just know, we want to hear, we'll listen when you talk. That's great. They want to open up. My middle child is he's a lot like me, very reserved, very quiet, prefers to be alone most of the day. If he's not out kicking his soccer ball, he's in his room by himself. But he'll come out about once a day. We call it his talk time. He'll just appear and just bleh, for 2 hours, just tell you everything. And it is remarkable how many things he is discovering. He came into the room the other day and just was like, Mom, did you know that you're older than Croatia? I was like, wow, thanks. But like, he's like, no, Croatia was independent. And I was like, wow, where did you learn that? Like, the things that they figure out and that they're learning and discussing. And he learned it because he's playing a game online with a friend who lives in Europe and visited Croatia. Like, we live in this amazing world now where information is here. It's right here. Yeah. Why are it's so antiquated to sit in a table and write things by hand and be forced to read it from a textbook. Like, of course there's a place for those things, but.
Yep. You picked for our listeners who are not watching this on YouTube, you picked up your phone.
Yes.
And you said, it's all right here. Mm-hmm. And I mean, there is an equivalent. I don't know where I read this, but if you have a smartphone, you have an equivalency of having a high school diploma in your hand, mm-hmm. if not further education, sure. Right? Sure.
My 4-year-old, we have an Alexa in our kitchen. Mm-hmm. I like to just play music and remind me. He'll walk up to me and go, Alexa, tell me. Dinosaurs are his favorite thing. He'll go, Alexa, tell me about Spinosaurus. And then he'll just listen to the facts. Alexa, tell me about whatever dinosaur. And like, he's learned how to do that. At that age, he's learned how to learn, how to receive information. Yeah, that's great.
That's one of my big things, and I think it's one of the beautiful things from unschooling is I feel like most what I teach, if I am teaching or showing my kids something, it's actually teaching them, how do you find mm-hmm. this? What are the resources? Where can you look if you want more? And to me, that is one of the most important skills that you can have in your life. That is the problem solving.
Yes.
And if you know how to research, ask questions, look things up, then there's nothing that you can't do. And so it's very much like, let's use some, what are the resources mm-hmm. that are available to us? And I just remembered, it was armadillos.
Okay. Well, they both start with an A.
Similar. But I, it's so interesting to, then I'm like, yeah, tell me more about it. And then I was like, is that a reptile? And so then he was like, I'm not sure. And so then I was like, how can you find out? Mm-hmm. And so then immediately we're on this big research quest, and now we're looking at pictures and there's more videos, and that is the part that I love doing with them, is how do we find out more about whatever it is. And then, the thing too about calculators. And I remember, because I was terrible at math and I'm dyslexic, and it was like, you have to memorize this because you don't get to
never have a calculator in your pocket.
That's right, right?
They all
just gonna carry a calculator around all day.
Yeah. And then it's like, actually now, yes. Also, so very rarely have I, even needed to do that out in public.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, well, there's a really interesting TED Talk. I'd have to find. I never remember the name of it, but it was a very advanced level mathematician who said that 95% of us will never use math that we learned beyond fourth grade.
yes.
Because in everyday, unless we're going to be like engineers, accountants, or math teachers, we'll never use it again beyond fourth grade. And I have a funny story about that, actually. My oldest, about like 2 years ago, we had just moved to a new area and he was meeting some new friends and they all went to public school. So he felt a little, left out because he was always unschooled. And I guess at one point they made fun of him for not knowing what fractions were. And he came home and he was like, I think I'm dumb. Like, why did you never teach me fractions? And I was like, you know what fractions are? And he's like, no, I don't. And I was like, okay, well, come here. And so I just drew a couple fractions on my notebook, right? Like 1/4, 1/2. And he was like, oh, that's a fraction? And I was like, yeah, he had never seen the word fractions written at the top of a worksheet. He's like, oh, like when I'm cooking.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
like
right.
when I have to calculate a discount at the store. Like he knew all the ways in which he was using that in real life. He had just never had to calculate them on a worksheet completely out of context. And yet when he went out with his friends to a store, if something was on sale, they would all ask him, hey, Charlie, how much will this be if it's 20% off? Because he had learned the skill in real life. He had not had to calculate it on a page completely out of context, and he could actually use it. Ironically, now he's started his own little revolution in our community where 3 of his best friends who were public schoolers now homeschool through Bridge Academy with him. So they're this little like cohort of homeschoolers out running around fishing and doing jobs for people during
They're
the day.
lifing.
Yeah,
They're out there
exactly.
living.
Yep.
Yep.
So, yeah, but it's when you learn things in real life, in context, it sticks.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's like you said too, he came to you, he had the knowledge, he had the experience.
Yep.
He just didn't have that formal word.
Exactly.
And that's exactly, when I'm trying to explain to parents how does unschooling work, like how are they going to XYZ later on? That's exactly what I tell them. It's like they are experimenting in the real world on a daily basis. And when it means something, when it means enough to them to have the formalized version of it, they will come to you
Yeah.
and they will say, hello, how come you never taught me fractions? And you said, you know fractions, right? And so you are just giving you're just formalizing all of that real world experimentation.
And they can learn things when you're ready. You can learn it so much faster. I have
And-
literally seen kids who have done a year's worth of math in a month when they
Yes.
decided that they were ready
Yes.
for it.
Yep.
Because they wanted to know it. They needed it for some reason. Kids who couldn't read a thing want to engage in the Minecraft chat with an older brother. Boom, they figure it out like that. Something that
And
we've been drilling and drilling and
And that
drilling
is
for
so
months.
typical of PDAers.
Yes.
It has, whatever they are doing has to hold value.
Yes.
Because if it doesn't hold value, it is absolutely meaningless to them. And it's a demand. And therefore it's going to be met with, an avoidance. So, it's, and it's just fascinating. To be able to see the knowledge without having to have any kind of, any kind of like metrics behind it is so freeing.
Yeah. I say it's like on a conveyor belt, right? Like we're so worried about the pace of the conveyor belt when our kids are in the system. And then when you've stepped away from the conveyor belt, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter how fast the belt is moving if you're not on it.
Yeah.
Let it go. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just had a memory. I taught fourth grade, and in the state I taught, it was we're going to test you on a 5-paragraph essay. It was part of the state testing. And I can remember we were just about to start the test. And these things are like, it's almost like lockdown. State
Yes.
testing is like absolute lockdown, right?
That was a big light bulb for me in 5th grade, having to cover my walls.
Cover your walls. You have to, you know, the security around state testing is just, it's beyond any kind of rational thought. That being said, I had a student look at me, and we had, you know, their test booklets were already on there. We've already taken our pencil, slipped it inside the, you know, the tab, and we have already opened. Okay, so at this point, like, unless you are actively bleeding, or, you know, some like, or there's a fire in your classroom, you're taking this test like that. This is, and he looked at me and he said, I'm going to throw up. And he went outside, and we were in a portable,
Of course.
right? He went outside, leaned over the stair decking, and he threw up. And he came back inside and he said, okay, I'm ready. And it was probably 20 years ago that this happened.
Yeah.
And I can remember like it was yesterday.
Yep. And then to think about what haunts me is, how does that affect them now, knowing that that kid is probably an adult with a child. What are his views on education? How did I formulate his
Exactly.
emotions?
That's exactly like,
trauma,
what kind of trauma did I put on my students?
Yep.
Because
Even
of
trying
this?
to be, even in, you know, because in my classrooms were the place to be. Every kid, every parent wanted their kids in my class, because we were going outside, we were spray painting, we were doing cool stuff. I didn't care about test scores, and still, it's still traumatic to be, you know, a number.
And behind the scenes, as a teacher, you are being told, you know, I mean, the faculty meetings where they've got your performance review is based on the gains that, you know, all of these little, it's just, so of course, that pressure you're going to put on a 3rd grader or a 4th grader.
And that trickles down. That trickles
Yeah.
down because the pressure is on the administration. It was my last full year as a 5th grade teacher, because I did it for a couple of years. My last year, the scores had repeatedly dropped in this school. Again, it was Title I, very low income.
Yeah.
It was, you know, test scores were the least of these families' concerns.
Right. When you trying to figure out how you're going to eat or where you're going to sleep.
Exactly. But the principal it was her last, like, she had obviously been pulled into these meetings of, you're going to be done if this doesn't change.
Yeah.
And that, you could see that trickle down pressure.
Yes.
Because she brought the 5th grade team into a meeting. I'll never forget. I probably should not even say this, and it's been long enough. I don't even know where she is anymore. She gave us test books. She said, you didn't see these. I didn't give you these, but the kids need to know. We can't have fail again. And she opened the test books early and showed them to us, because she was so afraid to lose her job. So how valid are the results? How much, like, this is not an isolated incident.
No.
That was almost 20 years ago. It does not. These are the things that are happening because these little numbers that don't actually say anything about an individual child. Nothing. They tell you nothing about the individual child. And that's a huge myth around standardized testing. You literally cannot gain any information about the individual child here. And then we have that pressure, right? Because if she's in trouble, we're in trouble. So if we're in trouble, the kids are in trouble. And so then we have that pressure of now we have to take this illegal information that we've obtained and somehow make it better and force the kids to do better, right? It's just this pressure of the system trickling down, all for money, right? All for funding. And who's hurt? The person at the bottom, which is the kids.
Yep. And yes, so I don't want to stray too far off of the unschooling
Right.
and the sausage factory that is public schools. But you know, but it matters. Those things matter to that 4th grader who got up and puked. You know, that matters.
Yeah.
And, you know, I still, again, 20 years ago, it was probably 20 years ago. I still think about that. So if, you know, if we can, and I also want to acknowledge the privilege that I have, that I can have my son at home and educate him at home.
Yes.
You know, and that's, you know, one of the things that when we start supporting families who have kids in public school, one of my first questions is, can you bring them home? You know, and if you can't, then we go, you know, we do our best to support and make sure the accommodations are there. But if you can't, especially if you have a PDA who is in burnout, you just can't recover from burnout
Not quickly.
in school.
No.
You can't do it.
Nope. And that's when I have new PDA families come to me at Bridge. And I'll say also, it is a privilege, but it is also an immense sacrifice. And I have seen
Yes.
I have seen families make incredible sacrifices to make it work. Because the thing is, for some families, it's nice. There's a lot of emotions around homeschooling and a lot of, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't that be nice? But when you are in a situation where it is an emergency,
Yes.
it is life and death to bring your child out of that
Yes.
situation. It's amazing how many things you can find. It's like the mom that can lift the car, right? Like
Yep.
you can find amazing ways to make it work. And, but one of the things I tell PDA families when they come to me is, I don't want to hear about academics from you. That's not what we're doing here. If the only thing you tell me you've done this whole year is we were healing, that is learning.
Yep.
That is learning, because there's kids have to learn how to advocate for themselves. They have to learn they're not going to be kids forever. And that's the reality of being a parent with a PDA, right? We're not just getting them through school. That's not it. That's not the vibe. That's dangerous on the other side. To just conform. That is not what we want. They need to learn where to be safe, how to make safe spaces, who are safe people, how to advocate for those safe places, how to regulate. That is what matters. That is the learning that matters more than anything else. And it's, you know, Maslow's hierarchy. If we don't feel safe, we cannot learn.
Nope. We can't access those
cannot.
areas of our brain.
Yes, you
If we are not
cannot
safe.
learn if
Right.
you are not safe. And safe is not just physical.
Nope.
Safe is emotional, safe is mental, safe is social. If we don't feel safe, we cannot learn. And we certainly cannot be creative and joyful in that learning. And so that is the most important thing for families when they come to me with kids in burnout. That is first. I'm not worried about the check marks on academics. What the learning is life learning. That's what we're giving credit for here, right? That's what we need to see. Because then, like you said, when they feel that safety, when they know they're there, oh my gosh, they can do amazing things at lightning speed. They can learn so many things so fast, but they have to feel safe first.
And I think it is really important to keep in mind that learning doesn't stop at 18.
Exactly.
Exactly. Why is it just within that range that so much has to be done?
Because that's all we can control legally. That's why.
And so in our house, in our family, it's like, well, oh, what grade are you? And my kids are like,
I end up priming my son, like
Yeah.
when we're going to a doctor's appointment, or you know, I'm just like,
Right.
okay, they're going to want to do small talk. They're going to ask you questions. They're going to ask you what grade you're in.
Yeah.
You're in the 9th grade.
Right.
They're going to ask you what you enjoy in school. This is what you enjoy in school. You know what I mean? So I'm
Test prepping. You're test
right,
prepping.
right. So it's just kind of like,
Yeah.
you know, and we're at a point where, you know, we are regulated in our family, and we are, so he can do that.
Yeah.
I certainly do not, I would not advise, if you were not in a pretty regulated place, you know, that I would not suggest priming your kid for any reason.
Sure.
But yeah, we do. We have those.
Yeah, grade levels definitely didn't matter until my kids entered their sports eras. Then they needed to know that. Then they needed to know what grade they were in to play sports. But otherwise, whatever. I don't
Yeah, I'm like,
cares. Yeah.
it doesn't matter.
It's off that conveyor belt, right? You left it
Yeah.
all behind. It doesn't matter anymore, which is also, at Bridge Academy, we give them all the resources. You pick the grade you want to be enrolled in, because that will matter on paper, right? We take what matters on paper. That's the part we're going to handle. Okay, so your son's in 9th grade. That's what we put on paper because that's what the district's going to need. That's what his transcripts will need. You've got all the resources from pre-K to 12. He can learn whatever he wants,
That is
right? And we'll
correct.
give you
Yep.
whatever supports we can, because that's not how learning happens. We don't stay within this little range of learning. My kids would be so bored if they were trapped in this range of learning in grade levels. Like, I just think about how the spectrum of like content that my kids consume and how bored they would be to be trapped in that, like,
Yeah, like
the
if you
wall
can
of
only
learning.
do 9th grade level.
Yeah.
And that's it. The other funny part about homeschool is there's always this question about like, well, how will they learn how to socialize? And I'm like, well, can your 9th grader like go into the store and grocery shop alone and like get food and talk to the checkout lady?
Yeah.
Like, because mine can. And then the other thing too is like they're stuck within that group, that grade group age range, and that's where they're at. And so my daughter has friends of all different ages, and I'm like, wow, that would be really hard if her social circle was restricted down to only the people in her grade. And
it's forced socialization. Forced socialization is not real socialization, right? Like, we don't, as an adult, first of all, I challenge people on this to think, how many friends from school do you still have? Like, how many real friendships from school still matter to you? Because in real life, we don't have conversations and spend our time only with people exactly our age that live in a 4-mile radius of us. That's always controlled by a higher being. That's not real life. And also, like, the millennial generation is like notoriously antisocial.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We all grew up in public schools, and we don't even want to answer our doorbells. Like, we won't go to the door. I hide under, I hide around the corner. I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm antisocial. It didn't prepare me to be a social being. I'll have conversations online, but in real life, I don't want to talk to anybody. And yet my son, he knows, in this town where I live, everybody knows me as Charlie's mom. I'm Charlie's mom, because everyone knows who my son is, because it's personality too. He's an outgoing person. He wants to go out. He'll talk to everyone. He'll call me. He leaves early in the morning and fishing. Fishing is his big thing. He'll go out and fish, and he'll like FaceTime me to check in. And some days he's fishing with little kids. Some days he's fishing with other teenagers. Sometimes there's an old grandpa there fishing with them. They were just on the stream together. Like, he knows everyone, because it's just his personality, and he hasn't been restricted by these like social norms. Yeah.
Plus, many times our PTAers, their age range, their group, they're not the ones that they really can connect with. It's usually like younger, or it's older.
Much older.
Yeah. So that's another freeing reality
For sure.
for this way of learning.
Yep. Definitely.
such an incredible conversation. I follow you on social media, Facebook and on Instagram. Absolutely so encouraging for me. For years, just to know there's somebody out there saying like, your kid will read when they're ready, and they don't need test scores, and they don't need to write spelling words 900 times. And so thank you for your social media, because it has been a big encouragement to me, just to feel like I'm not alone in this whole swap of PDA parenting, autistic parenting, and then not just homeschool but unschool. And so I just would encourage everyone to follow you on social media. We'll make sure everybody gets all of that information, because I think that you have a lot of wisdom, and I'm also so thankful for your courage in speaking up and encouraging parents to kind of follow their dream, even when it seems intimidating and really scary. And so just thank you for all that you provide, and now even for your private school, which is incredible.
And I just want to let you know how appreciative I am that it's affordable as well. You have made this obtainable for, I would say, the majority of people who wish to access your school. So I appreciate that.
I had a lot of battles with financial advisors and all kinds
bet
of
you
people,
did.
but that's been a sticking point for me. That's my background is working with families who didn't have the resources.
Right.
I would never. That was very important to me. The equity of it was very important to me. So.
And you can tell.
Yeah.
You can absolutely tell. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. If you would like to learn more about pathological demand avoidance, you can find us, journeyswithpda.com. You can find us on Facebook, Journeys with PDA. We are also on Instagram. You can always drop us an email at journeyswithpda@gmail.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for having
Nice to have
me.
you. What a great conversation.
Yeah.
Everybody take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.